How you doing? Eyes up football, playing what's in front of you, whatever you want to call it. I've got a good question online about that from a follower. And sometimes when I get a good question, which I think has an interesting answer, I'll share it with you. So here goes. He asked me, this guy, how do you develop it? How do you develop eyes up football as a player? But this answer can be suitable for both players and coaches. Eyes up football, what I teach my players to do. Instinctively, as rugby league players, we tend to look inward on the field because, for example, if you picture a scene, there's a play the ball going on to your left about 6-8 metres away. We tend to just look at the play the ball because we want to see where the game is. The skill I teach my player is that play the ball would last anything between 5-6 seconds or 9 to 10 seconds. So you've got a bit of wriggle room there. Look at the ball for a second as it's in the process of being played or the player's in the process of getting up. You've got a few seconds to play with. Take your eyes off that play the ball and look up. Look at the defenders. Now, this is the key thing. You've got to be able to recognise what you see. So you don't know what you don't know. So until you look at it, one thing looking at it, but you've also got to process what's in front of you. So, for example, if you're a right edge back rower, for example, and you look up and there's only two defenders and the play the ball's near a scrum line, you might do an override call because you feel you can get an overlap there. Those two defenders could be tight together or they could be spread, so you might think you can go through a gap and get your nose through. But it's all about that looking up and making a decision about what you see. And that's a key thing because rugby league, as I've said before, it's a sport that brings out our human instincts, and you're playing against players who want to bash you, right? Ultimately, some of them want to bash you more than others, depending on where you are in the world. But when you are under threat physically, you tend to internalise fight or flight. And that comes in a little bit to looking at the ball and making sure you focus on the ball and then protect yourself or run at bodies so that you can meet their force with your force. I just tell my players to look for green grass and fresh air. Look up. And that key skill is how to learn to look at what you look at. I mean, I'm looking at the camera now. My eyes are looking at the camera, but I'm not really taking in what's in and around the camera. The make and the model and all that kind of thing. If I just readjust my focus a little bit, I notice I've been talking for 2 minutes and 55 seconds ish. I also notice that it's on a stand, and I also notice what's behind. And you will do the same thing when you're looking at this video. Like, just look at the video, and you might even be taking your eyes off it and looking at something else but listening. Just because we look at something doesn't mean we're seeing it, and I suppose that's the big challenge, right? So the player asked me, how do you develop that? Well, practice in training games and all that kind of thing. You have to mentally visualise it, I think, as well. Just mentally visualising, looking at the play the ball, looking at the defence, picture what kind of scenarios may come up in your play, depending on your position. And then you look back at the ball when you think it's coming to you, so you never take your eyes off the ball, right? I think sometimes people are so focused on catching that ball that they look at it for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds, but really you can take your eyes off it for a bit, look up, and then look back at the ball, or the person who's going to pass it to you. So I hope that makes some sense. How can you develop that as a coach? Loads of games and pull up people who aren't doing it, basically. Tell your players to keep the hips square and just turn the head, because what tends to happen is they look at the ball and their body turns with it. So you're basically blind to those opportunities in front of you there. Loads of games so they can learn game sense, so you can fast track that. The other thing you can do in drills are things like decision making drills, 4v3 and 3v2 and maybe even 2v1 if you need to, about fixing defenders but looking for space. There's no substitute for repetition when it comes to these things. What you can do as a player at home, learning how to do that on your own, is watch games of rugby league on TV. So, for example, when you're watching an NRL or Super League or whatever it may be, have a look at players in your position. Have a look at what they do. And so many of them don't do it, but have a look at the defensive patterns that happen. Right? So, If a play the ball goes one way and players run one way, what does the defence do? And remember, when there's 13 players in a team, most defensive teams have 2 markers and 1 fullback. That means there's only 10 in that defensive line. Those 10 might be compressed, they might be spread, they might be a mixture of both. And sometimes the fullback and the team get the numbers wrong each side of the play the ball. So if you ever play the ball in the middle of the field on the post, you should really have 5 and 5. Have a look in games of NRL and Super League how many teams have 6 and 4 from a play the ball in the middle. So you'd attack the 4 really, right? There's always an overlap on the field, and you only find it if you look for it. So I thought I'd share that with all of you. Very busy at the minute with the Aim Higher course. You'll have seen that happening in Brisbane South. Soon it's going to Brisbane North, and I'm talking to a few other potential venue hosts in New South Wales and in Queensland and further afield, but this COVID thing is getting in the way. I do suppose, however, that one of the things that's happening is because of the emphasis on Aim Higher is in my messages to you, some people forget that I've actually got online resources, and I want you to know, wherever you are watching this video, if you want a coach mentor, if you're a coach or if you're a player and you want coaching, you can do it through the website rugbyleaguecoach.com.au. You can do, there's now a courses website, which is a separate website, but you can access it through the main website. But the domain name there is courses.rugbyleaguecoach.com.au. But if you've got no budget and you can't afford anything or want to dabble with something, go on YouTube and just type in Rugby League Coach in YouTube there. Over here in Australia, great time, because the rugby league season is starting to kick in, the pre-season. Not far off doing my first pre-season session of the year with my team this year, which is good, my school team. And I suppose everyone's at that time now where they're thinking rugby league. If you're unfortunate enough to be in an area where COVID is still taking a grip, then you might not be so clear on when you're going to start again. So all I can say is, you got to try and learn all you can and keep your mind in. The courses website, I suppose the website is like a big thick textbook. You just find what you want, read on it. And like with a textbook, sometimes you read just the bit you need. You'll take the chapter on, say, skill development, for example, and read that. Well, it's exactly the same online. There's that much resource on there that you can get lost in it, right? I accept that. What the courses do is allow you to focus in on what you need to focus on. So with the coaches I've been mentoring online last week, I did a Zoom meeting with them because they're not in Australia, they're overseas, have a guess where. And I actually took them through online the courses. And the courses at this particular juncture were the attacking courses, so the game plan series. And there's questions underneath each video, that multiple choice. And I've designed the questions so that they're all a bit similar, so you have to think. And I could actually see the balls rolling in their heads because they were thinking, and they're talking to each other in their language and coming. And they had a group discussion about it and then came back with the answer. And I think that process of having a test on it as well really gets you thinking. So the courses, again, I've structured the courses so they fit any budget really. There's one as cheap as $5 and they go up to something, I can't remember. So yeah, plenty of options for you to learn. The Aim Higher course will be coming to you very soon. If you're listening to this and watching this and you think you like the sound of this Aim Higher and want to bring it to your club or your area, shoot me a message and we'll start talking. But if you can't get that in person, then online is the way to go. Billy Slater or Paul Green for Origin culture. Look, there's no doubt that Billy Slater has got a great football mind, but you need a lot more than a football mind to be a coach. I do worry that there'll be a lot of coaches out there who've done a massive apprenticeship and they're not getting a look in. Also, Paul Green has won premierships and done a huge apprenticeship, both at State Cup level and NRL level. My solution for Queensland, right? And feel free to comment. They're worried that Paul Green won't last longer than a year. That's fine. Give him the job. Billy Slater as an assistant. If in a year's time there's some different candidates available and Billy Slater is still doing his apprenticeship, then promise him the job after that. So 2 away. I just think, I don't know Billy Slater personally, but I respect him hugely. There's a lot more to coaching than just the X's and O's. And even though he's great with the X's and O's and he knows the game and he can articulate it well, to be doing your apprenticeship as a coach in the Origin arena just shows we've got a long way to go as a sport, I think. All the best. See ya.